has had an immediate effect on basically freezing and, in the words of some RCMP officers, terminating child predator investigations in Canada. And some believe that Canada has now become the safest place in the world to be a child predator. I wonder if you can give your comments on that, Minister.
Well, that obviously would not be a circumstance that's at all acceptable. I am informed that the RCMP and CSIS are obviously looking at the court decision and determining, based on some legal advice, the operational impacts of that decision. Getting access to an IP address, I wouldn't have compared to looking in a phone book. I think that's a little bit disingenuous. These are areas that are governed by law and a body of case law. But we recognize that the police, the RCMP and other police partners, and CSIS, in the case of national security investigations, need appropriate access to that information, and will take whatever steps are necessary to ensure that the police have access to that information, while obviously respecting the Charter of Rights and cases that
thank you, Minister, for that. And I'm not that reassured, because we do have RCMP officers who are speaking out already on this. They spoke out earlier this month, and they said Canada must act quickly. This ruling opens a huge gap in our ability to protect kids and stop offenders from preying on them. There must always be a balance between citizen privacy and the state. But in the words of this RCMP officer, who is on Twitter, Sergeant Carrie Shima, this decision has put our children in the crosshairs. Those are the words of RCMP officers on the front lines. It's now been 3 weeks. Your government has now unveiled massive new legislation, the Online Harms Act, and yet I can find nothing in your Online Harms Act that deals with the fallout from this very concerning decision, which, in the words of an RCMP officer, has essentially terminated investigations into online sex offenders and identifying child victims. We cannot allow our country to be a safe haven for child predators. What are we going to do about this immediately, Minister?
So, Mr. Chair, I share, obviously, Mr. Lloyd's view that we can't allow Canada to become a safe haven for child predators. That's a circumstance that would be obviously completely inappropriate. I have confidence that the RCMP, respecting the law, respecting decisions of the Supreme Court and the Charter, will come to the government with advice, as will CSIS, on the most appropriate way to ensure that they have the tools to do that exact work that Mr. Lloyd correctly identified. And perhaps the Commissioner or others can discuss this in the second part. But, Mr. Chair, I think the important principle is that in a case where an important Supreme Court decision reviews authorities
Sorry,
like
Minister,
that.
I do only have about a minute left. I just want to say, how far are you willing to go to protect the children in this country? Would you be willing to consider using the notwithstanding clause if that were the only option to allow prosecutors or allow RCMP to do these investigations?
We're obviously not going to answer hypothetical questions like that. Our views in terms of the notwithstanding clause are well known. I think Mr. Lloyd is well ahead of himself in concluding that the advice that I'm going to get as minister with my colleague, the minister.
I'm not making any conclusions, Minister.
Mr. Lloyd, you asked me a question.
How far you're willing to go to protect children in this country? Is that
do everything that we lawfully can to protect children and support the women and men in the RCMP and CSIS and other agencies that do this important work. They are doing effective and good work in this area.
They can't,
and the government's job is to ensure they have the resources and the authorities to do that work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Mr. Gahir, please, online. 5 minutes.
Great, thank you. And thank you to the Minister and the witnesses for appearing before the committee. Minister, if you look at Mississauga, the 11 electoral wards of Mississauga, Ward 5, it contains Pearson Airport, and it's largely within my riding of Mississauga Malton. It by far saw the most number of auto thefts in 2023 out of all of Mississauga, and understandably because it's home to Pearson Airport, which is a transport hub. It's been about a month and a half since we've had the National Summit on combating auto theft. I want to ask what progress has been made since then.
So, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Gahir, thank you for the question. And you correctly noted in your community, the community you represent, and the neighboring communities, this is understandably a very real source of concern to the citizens, to our partners in municipal governments, in the provincial government. As colleagues will know, we made some initial investments both in police partners with police partners and the Border Services Agency We'll continue to do more. I have taken note of comments and conversations that we've had with elected municipal leaders in this space. I know that the mayor of Brampton has been an effective partner and has identified some concerns around the ability to quickly procure the appropriate scanning technologies for some of these intermodal hubs. So we're very much seized with that work, and we'll do everything we can as quickly as we can to support the important work done by police services. In some cases, these are municipal or regional police forces. The RCMP, as the commissioner noted a little while ago, has an important role in coordinating much of the transnational organized crime elements involved in this increase in auto theft, and their ability to work with international partners